From the Ministry of the Presidency in Georgetown, this is This Week with the President.
Welcome to another edition of This Week with the President, our first for the year 2017. In the highlights, cabinet adjustments made to foster more effective delivery of public services. Senior counsels receive commissions of appointment. 45-year-old Guyana-China relations to be further strengthened as President accredits new ambassador. A Myla project not financially feasible in its current form, and more. Stay with us. For the first time in Guyana's history, 3 women have received senior counsel appointments. They are Justice Roxanne George Wiltshire, Ms. Rosalie Robertson, and Justice Claudette Singh. After over 20 years, the judiciary welcomed 9 new senior counsels. These distinguished and long-serving legal practitioners were presented with their commissions of appointment on Wednesday at State House. The head of state said that the appointment of senior counsels, which was last done in 1996, constitutes an important institution of the state, and that the president's failure to confer such appointments is a dereliction of duty.
It is my duty to pay respect to those to whom respect is due. I am a trustee of tradition, the traditions which sustain society. It is my obligation, not an option, it is my obligation to respect our national system of honors. Failure to confer these awards, whether as a result of caprice or malice, would constitute a dereliction of duty on my part. It will be a debasement of our identity of nationhood, and it will be an affront to our citizenry. I promise that I shall, with regularity and consistency, recognize and reward the work of deserving citizens by conferring these honors on the basis of merit every year.
The other distinguished legal practitioners to receive this honor are Attorney General Mr. Basil Williams, Mr. Neil Aubrey Boston, Mr. Charles Fungafat, Mr. Clifton Llewellyn John, Mr. Rafi Khan, and Mr. Vidyanand Prasad. Since the list of appointees was announced on December 31, 2016, there have been some criticisms over the fact that the sitting judge was included. However, the head of state noted that the 20-year absence of appointments mean that a generation of qualified legal practitioners have missed out on receiving this honor.
I am advised that these are persons who served. I pointed out that the combined service over 338 years. The average service is 27 and a half years. For the first time in 20 years, I've appointed 3 women, and I couldn't find any reason why women weren't appointed before. As far as the sitting judge is concerned, my main concern with the case of Justice Roxanne George is that she served for several years in the DPP's chambers, and were this a normal jurisdiction during those years, she would have had the SC long ago. It is a travesty that a person of her qualification, is a travesty that for 50 years since independence we couldn't find a qualified attorney to grant, a woman attorney to grant the senior counsel to. And she's fully qualified. And she did serve in DPP's chambers. Similarly, Justice Claudette Singh did serve as Solicitor General. And in normal jurisdictions, these were qualifications that would have enabled them to earn that award. So I'm just correcting an abnormal situation.
President Granger reminded that the elevation to the status of senior counsel is not perfunctory or ornamental, but rather it is a symbol of nationhood that promotes a sense of national pride by defining who Guyanese are as a people and the values for which they stand.
Your elevation to the status of senior counsel is a manifestation of the idea of nationhood. It is a mark of respect, of recognition, and of reward for the accomplishments of you who have given and who will continue to give selfless service to our nation. You embody a massive amount of legal education and experience, and we are proud of you. We are proud to have such eminence in our legal profession. You are exemplars of a fine tradition of an honorable and ancient profession.
For newly minted senior counsel, this recognition, which marks a defining moment in the professional lives of those who are part of the judicial system, was a long time coming.
The President requests the judges of the Supreme Court, because we are practicing before them. The judges will nominate lawyers who they feel have reached the threshold to be admitted as silk, and then the judges will pass their recommendation to the Chancellor, who puts the recommendation together and forward it on to the President, and from that list he selects.
When Guyana removed the last vestige of constitutional affiliation with Great Britain, it intensified its independence by establishing its own system of national awards, including the award of senior counsel. It is for this reason that President Granger urged the awardees to see the elevation as a symbol of nationhood. After careful assessment of the performance of the Ministries of Public Health, Social Cohesion, and Social Protection, President Granger has announced a shift in ministerial portfolios in an effort to ensure that his government deliver the quality and level of public service that citizens deserve. After a cabinet meeting on January 3rd, a decision was made for Dr. George Norton, who was at the time Minister of Health, to be reassigned to the Ministry of Social Cohesion, replacing Ms. Amna Ali, who has been reassigned to the Ministry of Social Protection. Ms. Valda Lawrence, who held responsibility for the Social Protection Ministry, has now been reassigned to the Ministry of Public Health.
So it is my responsibility as head of government to continuously assess the ability of the cabinet to fulfill its functions, and this is a normal activity. I invited Minister George Norton, and we have been working together for the last 5 years. In the 10th Parliament, he was the Shadow Minister of Health, Public Health, and when we went into government in the 11th Parliament, he was Minister of Public Health again. So I was quite happy, but as you know, during 2016 there was some criticisms, and I felt the criticism were detracting from the performance of the cabinet as a whole, and as a result I thought it was prudent and timely to make the changes at the beginning of 2017.
The head of state sees this shift as a positive move. He added that with his tremendous knowledge of Guyana's hinterland, Dr. Norton has an advantage in fostering social cohesion and bridging the gap that exists between the coast and the interior. The President spoke of Minister Lawrence's background in management, which makes her ideally suited for the Ministry of Health.
Largely it's a management problem in terms of materials and human resources and the delivery of services to the various regions of Guyana, and I believe she'll be ideally suited to that ministry. So all in all, I feel it's a positive move by the government of Guyana, and I'm very grateful to the three ministers for taking up the challenge posed by their different portfolios. And Minister Amna Ali is a very steady person. She's the chief whip, very reliable. In the 10th Parliament, she worked with me. And I believe that in terms of her knowledge, coming from Region 5, coming from the rural areas, she has a good knowledge of the needs of the ordinary people in the urban areas, in the rural areas. So I believe that in terms of social protection, she'll be able to bring skills in terms of her ability to interact with people, her knowledge of the problems affecting poor people. And I'm very confident that she'll complement or she'll add to the work, supplement the work that has been done before by Minister Valda Lawrence.
Last January, the President renamed the Ministry of Governance to the Ministry of Natural Resources and appointed Mr. Raphael Trotman as the Minister of that ministry. He also named Ms. Simona Brooms as the Minister within the Ministry of Natural Resources, reassigning her from the Ministry of Social Protection. The government of Guyana is of the view that the recently released report on the Amila Falls project issued by the Norwegian government identifies several risks and flaws in the design of the project, which will threaten its long-term effectiveness and prove too costly and burdensome to the people of Guyana and the country as a small developing state. Since taking office in 2015, the current administration has been studying the feasibility of the multi-million-dollar project. The report, which was done by Norway, highlights some of the very concerns that were initially raised by the government when it was in opposition. Mr. Charles Serres, civil and geotechnical and groundwater hydrology engineer, has added credence to the government's position, noting that he believes that the Amila project would be a heavy burden to taxpayers should the project be given the go-ahead in its current configuration.
But the reality is that, do we need Amila Falls at this stage? Is it? I think it's an onerous burden to place on our resources to spend that kind of money on Amila Falls when we can spend less money for the same volume of power. What we need at this stage of development is more power. And more power should come from a mix of the resources that are readily available to us. And I think, as I said, we've been too dogmatic in considering that Amila Falls is the only avenue for doing that. Right? There are a whole host of other avenues for doing that. Right? As I said, there is solar, there is wind, there is biomass. If we demonstrate that we can generate the capacity we need by 2025 out of those resources, then we should be looking at hydropower. Right? Because the reality is that hydropower places an onerous burden on us in terms of just getting the power to the consumer. Right? If we can develop those resources in our coastal plain, the need for a 270 kilometers long transmission line is eliminated, right? So I think that these things should be done in stages.
Providing his professional opinion after studying the report, the engineer said that the flaws and risks which have been pointed out by the independent review are significant and fatal and negate the efficacy of the development of this site.
There is no provision in the design for the removal of sediment from the reservoir. So it's conceivable that we can have a reservoir which is filled with sediment by the time this project is handed off to the people of Guyana. So where there is this claim that we're going to have access to free electricity, if this reservoir sediments up within that boot period, we have access to no electricity because there is no mechanism to remove sediment. So what they have identified here is a fatal flaw with this project, because essentially, if you sign a contract with the boot operator, right, the build, own, operating, transfer guy, he's providing electricity. During the time he's providing electricity, that reservoir is subject to sedimentation, right, and sediment deposit. Time passes, the reservoir is filled with sediment, and his contract, his 20-year period is up. Who is responsible for fixing that reservoir? You know, so it's an issue that hasn't been factored into the owner's requirement, because our consultants identified several issues with owner's requirements for the facility, including the fact that there's not a clear definition of what is it that the contractor should be providing to the owner. And these are basic design flaws. So you know, while the location of the project and the intent of the project might have been honorable, the engineering design leaves a lot to be desired.
Mr. Serres said that another one of the major concerns of the project is the distance between the site and the transmission center in Georgetown. He noted that the report clearly states that the financial hurdle for realizing the project is the 270 to 280 kilometers long transmission line required from the project site to the main dispatch center in Georgetown. The cost structure of the engineering, procurement, and construction contract shows that the line adds about 44% of the construction cost of the power plant itself, which again is reflected in the energy tariff.
I don't know that we need to spend 44% of the money on the plant on a transmission line, which is it serves only Amila Falls. If we spend that kind of money, we should be building a transmission line that can be utilized in the future. Now, this transmission line cannot be upgraded, can be utilized in the future. It will have to be upgraded if we develop a second hydropower plant as is recommended by NORCONSUL. Because NORCONSUL clearly establishes that we need a second hydropower plant by the year 2025.
Mr. Suarez said that there are cheaper and less risky options which can be pursued, all in keeping with the country's green agenda. He also believes that rice industry waste can be used to generate a significant amount of power.
And you know we can generate power for all the Escobar Coast from biomass, from rice husk. We have enough rice husk and wood waste in the quarantine to generate on the order of 6 megawatts of power. I don't know if anyone has ever looked at those as options. And those are options that are readily available.
And less costly.
And less costly, right? If all we need to do is put in a collection system and a few boilers in the Escobar Coast to make that air totally reliable on biomass, right? So I don't think that we have done a total examination of the total energy mix that we need in Guyana.
Meanwhile, head of the Project Management Office of the Ministry of the Presidency, Mr. Marlon Bristol, in an invited comment said that the government's concern about the project has been vindicated. He noted that the flaws identified do not augur well for the country given the cost implications.
The report identifies all the design issues, which has major cost implications, and by cost implications I mean it has implications for the total costs, which is now estimated at $858 million. I think they try to revise it down to $851 million, but it's still fairly high. And that does not consider, in my opinion, the cost of rectifying all the design issues identified. In addition to that, there would have to be at least 6 years before that project comes to fruition in terms of the hydrology studies that are required to be completed, etc., and all the other issues that needs to be rectified. The report identifies the original issues with the business model, with the EPC contractor. It also identifies the risks that was unbalanced towards the government of Guyana.
Having studied the report and conscious of the specific needs of the country, the government of Guyana proposes to utilize a mix of energy options, starting with less risky options such as solar and wind, as outlined in Budget 2017. In November last year, President Granger and Minister of Finance, Mr. Winston Jordan, met with Norway's Minister of Climate and Environment, Mr. Vidar Helgesen, and Mr. Per Faro, Director of the Government of Norway's International Climate and Forest Initiative, where the two parties explored intended goals for the extension of the Guyana-Norway Agreement. China is currently pursuing its 5-year plan 2016-2020, which is aimed at the development of a green economy by introducing a green low-carbon series of industries. In this regard, the accreditation of a new Chinese ambassador bodes well for the opportunities to be created to allow Guyana to draw from China's experiences as it tries to further its own green state agenda. On Wednesday, the President received letters of credence from His Excellency Chu Jiancheng, accrediting him as the new ambassador of China to Guyana.
Guyana and China have enjoyed very productive relations over the past 4 to 5 years. We have worked closely at the bilateral and multilateral levels on matters of interest to our peoples. Cooperation has spanned several areas, including agriculture, defense, education, health, infrastructure, and transportation. China has been a reliable partner to Guyana in development. Excellency, Guyana has noted China's introduction of its 13th 5-year plan, 2016-2020, which aims at achieving a green economy by introducing a green, low-carbon series of industries, expanding sustainable energy sources, extending forest protection, and establishing a green development fund.
The President told the ambassador that Guyana is furthering its green agenda and looks forward to intensifying cooperation in adoption of clean, green, and low-carbon technologies and renewable sources of energy during his tenure.
Guyana's own green agenda is consistent with China's objectives. Guyana is establishing a green state with emphasis on the protection of our environment, the preservation of our biodiversity, the provision of ecotourism and eco-educational services, and the promotion of practical measures to ensure climate adaptation. Guyana this year will place an additional 2 million hectares of its territory under conservation. We are committed to a low-carbon, low-emission trajectory of development.
Ambassador Jiang Shong replaces Ambassador Zhang Laiming, whose tenure came to an end late last year. The new envoy pledged to work to deepen existing ties and forge new bonds as the two countries work to consolidate their program of cooperation. Guyana and China share common values such as mutual respect for each other's territorial integrity and sovereignty, mutual non-interference in each other's internal affairs, cooperation for mutual benefit, respect for treaties and international law, and the maintenance of peace and security since they signed diplomatic ties on July 27, 1972. And now let's take a look inside the President's diary. As has become customary, the President ushered in the new year in church. Joined by his daughter Afua, the head of state attended midnight mass at St. George's Cathedral, where he partook in Holy Communion and greeted parishioners. On Friday, the President also met with CARICOM's Secretary General, Ambassador Erwin LaRocque, and a delegation from the Secretariat. As of January 1, 2017, President Granger assumed the chairmanship of CARICOM as per the rotational schedule for the chairmanship of the Conference of Heads of Government. As such, Guyana will host the 28th intersessional meeting of CARICOM Heads of Government, which is slated for February 16 and 17. This week in the Presidency and beyond, we take you all the way to Maka, Arcadia, on the east bank of Demerara, where 135 residents received permission to occupy state lands documents from Minister of State, Mr. Joseph Harmon.
Well, I feel good. I feel great because, you know, if you ain't got a piece of land and you're just living like that, you know, you ain't there no way. But having a piece of land of your own is a good thing.
Maka has a very rich agricultural history. It was a thriving community started by freed slaves who were involved in coffee and cocoa cultivation. In fact, the name Maka comes from the mocha coffee bean. This community was declared a village on May 23, 1894, and subsequently merged with Arcadia in 1970. The permission to occupy state lands document is temporary and valid for 3 months. It offers the residents the option of taking up a 50-year lease on the lands for a nominal fee. Once the fee is paid and the administrative procedures are completed, the residents would be able to live and farm on 1-acre plots of land.
Maka Arcadia is a good example of a traditional Guyanese village, and had it been given the necessary support, would today, I am quite sure, have been a viable and prosperous community. The granting of these permissions to occupy as a precursor to the issuance of leases is therefore the correction of what I call an historical injustice that denied the residents of Maka Arcadia use of its surrounding agricultural lands, and by extension, their community the opportunity to develop the village economy and create employment, especially for its young people.
The residents who have been occupying the land for about 25 years are only now receiving any form of legal documentation. This move by the government is in response to several letters sent to the Ministry of the Presidency detailing their plight. The residents had also been denied of documentation for land on which they had been doing agricultural work by the previous administration. And with that, we've come to the end of this week's edition of This Week with the President. Thank you for joining me. For regular updates on the Ministry of the Presidency, go to our website www.motp.gov.gy. Like our Facebook page, Ministry of the Presidency, and follow us on Twitter and Instagram at MOTP Guyana. Do have a safe and productive rest of the week. Goodbye.